welcome back to My Human Experience, where the mind meets the body and the body meets the soul. This is season 2, where we will be meeting with influential people that have impactful stories. On today's episode, I got to chat with my good friend Dan, also known as DLynch. Dan is releasing his 5th album, Sticky Notes, which will be his first release in 5 years. Dan is a producer, an artist, record label owner, and serial entrepreneur. Outside of his credentials, he's one of the most resilient, loyal, and soulful humans I know. Tune in to hear his insight into the music industry and how he got to where he is today. This is your first album in 5 years, is that right?
Yeah, since 2020.
So, why now?
That's a really good question, Emma. I guess it starts really with my last album I released probably at the worst possible time to release music in like the history of mankind ever. My last album came out June 2020. As the world was totally going insane, we had COVID going on, we had all the riots going on, political uproar, anything you can name, it was going on. The last thing people were paying attention to was any kind of media that wasn't the news. So that was kind of like a part of it too, because, it stung a little bit. It was like, the first album I released professionally that didn't do very well. So I feel like I kind of had something to prove, I guess. Like I knew that wasn't going to be the way that I was going out, But I don't know. I guess really it was just kind of right place, right time, right inspiration sort of deal. Like I was just telling you before we recorded this, like I moved into this house that was like built in like the 1920s, you know what I mean? And it was very intentional. I've kind of always wanted to do something like this, just move to the middle of nowhere and make an album. And it's finally what I did, you know what I mean? So it kind of just happened naturally, I suppose, is the long-winded answer to that.
I mean, I love that. I feel like the best things happen that way. It's like everything kind of just comes together. At least that's how I feel. But I totally relate to like 2020 thing because that's when my book came out. And it was like, this was a good time. But how could we have known?
How can you plan for that? Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. My album finished in like 2019 and we had that June 2020 date for like 8 months. You know what I mean? And then COVID happened and I was like, oh shit, this is not going to do well. And sure enough,
Yeah. I mean, your newest album, I listened to it. You shared it with me. It's amazing. If you feel like you had something to prove, I feel like you more than proved it. So,
I definitely did.
Yeah, it's just got that like, I don't know, that 90s like feel good feel to me. I feel like our generation especially is going to hit with.
It's kind of the album I always wanted to make. That's always been like my number one love with music. Like I'm still that guy, that listens to Tupac like every single day, so that's really the music that resonates with me. And I started managing an artist named Doggy Style, works with Snoop Dogg, and that's the kind of music that he makes. I kind of just fell into that. And that's what I mean by like right place, right time, right inspiration. I've just been literally surrounded by that type of music. So it was kind of only natural that I was like, well, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And you have Snoop Dogg on your album.
I do.
How did you get all the guests on your album? I'm so curious how that works.
I've been working with Snoop since 2017 is when I did my first track with him. I mentioned Doggy Style. He and I were actually a part of that big Fortnite thing that they did with Snoop Dogg and Eminem and Juice WRLD and stuff like that. So Snoop and his son manages kind of like all of his business. And he personally recommended Doggy Style to do the motion capture of Snoop Dogg. So when you see Snoop Dogg in Fortnite, it's actually Doggy Style. So we flew out there and we did that. So it was kind of like, not to say anybody owed us a favor, because that's crazy to say, but it was, the music industry is kind of like one of those things like scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. You know what I mean? So it's kind of been the relationship I've had with Snoop, either directly or indirectly, since 2017. Ice Cube, that was a Hail Mary. I had to call a lot of favors for that one. Granted, I met him about a year ago, was a little too starstruck to really say anything to him because that's like one of my favorite rappers ever, but I know people who know him and I literally, like, anybody that ever owed me a favor, I called that favor, So that's how that happened.
Okay. I love that. And you're in Pennsylvania now, right?
Yeah, I moved back to
Okay.
Philly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're still there. That's what I thought. I mean, and I know you've been going through all kinds of crazy stuff since from leaving California, going back out east.
Yeah.
How do you stay focused on the music when you're doing that?
Um, I don't know, honestly. It's a really hard question to answer because sometimes I'm not even sure. I think it's just one of those things where it's like if you truly love something, like you're gonna keep going back to it no matter what. Because obviously, when life gets chaotic and shit, like it does get very hard to focus, especially when you're in a position like myself where you have a lot of responsibility and a lot of pressure on you like at all times. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
um, I know but if you're listening, it's like I do a lot more than just like produce and make records. Like I'm behind the scenes doing A&R stuff, management stuff. Like I'm almost involved in every single bit of this industry. So, it's kind of one of those things like I can't really think about it because if I think about it, I'm gonna misstep and somebody's gonna get pissed. I might lose my job. You know what I mean? So it's kind of just autopilot, I suppose.
Okay, that's fair. You just put your head down and keep going. I mean, that's how
Just start and don't
most
stop
life,
until the wheels
right?
fall off. And pretty much.
Yeah, you just keep going. I know you kind of had to leave a lot to go back out to the east and start over. How is everything going with that? I mean, I feel like, everything in my life recently was a big like upheaval. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna start over. It's fine. Is that kind of how you felt like you were starting back over once you got there?
For sure. It was like I had to kind of relearn everything because LA and Philly are like two polar opposites. You know what I mean? Completely, completely different. Actually, Reno probably has more in common with Philly than LA does. So it was culture shock. It was culture shock when I moved out to LA from Philly. And then it was culture shock again coming back because the biggest thing for me is like the demeanor of people. You know what I mean? People here, you've heard this a million times. People on the East Coast, like they walk around with a chip on their shoulder, like the whole like I'm fucking walking here. Like that's a real thing. You know what I mean? So when I moved out to California, I had that chip on my shoulder being from Philly. And it was kind of rough for me. It was hard to make friends because people didn't really get my standoffish attitude. This is a story that'll probably make you laugh. Like, I was literally sitting in a parking lot with my friend in San Diego, and I was in her back seat. And we were smoking a bowl, right? And I had my door open, and I have one foot hanging out of it, whatever we're talking. And I see this guy kind of start jogging up towards my door. And my first instinct is like slam the door shut, lock the door, you know what I mean? Roll my window up. And I do that, and the guy stands there and looks at me and goes, "Damn, dude, I was just trying to match you. Like you," he literally said, "You must be from some fucked up place or something like that." And I laughed and I rolled down my window. I was like, "Yeah, dude, where I come from, like that's somebody robbing you at gunpoint, dude."
We don't do that here.
No, no. So it was like I had to let go of that. But then I moved back here and it's like I had to relearn that because everybody
Mhm.
here was like, you try to have a conversation with a stranger on the street and they look at you like you have 12 eyes. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's been a little bit of adjustment. That part's been kind of hard because I'm like a naturally really social person and everybody's kind of like, that's fucking talking, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think you're one of the friendliest people I know. At
Thank
least
you.
with
I
my
mean,
age.
likewise. Yeah, likewise. You met me in a really interesting way to talk about getting robbed at gunpoint, right?
Yeah. Which is why, and it's crazy to think too that I met you back there, rapping. Where even were we?
God, Ruben's Cantina on Fourth
Yes.
Street. What a dump that place was.
And I
God.
just happened to be there that night. And yeah, you
Mhm.
guys were performing. And then we had a not so friendly altercation. How these-
Yeah. Yeah. For those of you listening, what she means by that is there was some guy that wanted to battle me. And he came outside and he was talking to me about battling me. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, his buddy comes out and has a gun pulled out and gets in my face talking about whatever the fuck he was saying, like squirting and all this weird shit. But yeah, that was how me and Emma met in person.
That's so crazy. And
Yeah.
it's crazy too because that was like, what, 12 years ago now? It does not feel like it's been that long.
No, no kidding. Yeah, time flies. I'm old now, and I got gray in my beard.
Okay. I'm going to say I'm going to be forever young, but you will too, Dan, even if the grays come in. You just got to
Yeah,
watch.
no, it's okay. It's I saved this and people still card me, so
I mean,
it's good.
that's something.
Yeah, exactly.
So with the album, I know your release is April 20th. Love it. Very strategic, smart thinking.
Yes.
What are your plans with that? Like, how do you release it? What goes into releasing an album? I'm curious.
It's a good question. At least for me, every album has a different approach with how I market it. My first album was kind of just one of those kind of like buy your bootstrap kind of things. And I really don't even remember what the marketing for that was. I just remember it was very like guerrilla warfare style. Like, I'm going to get this out to everybody I fucking can. The second album, it was very tongue in cheek, with the success of my first album, everything kind of happened fast. So like people literally started saying stuff like, I sold my soul to the devil for success. So I kind of used that. And like my second album was full of like Illuminati imagery and, you know,
Mhm.
so basically where I'm going with that is I kind of find a theme and I find a thing that resonates. With this album, I'm not 100% sure what that is, other than that I know people really like the music. So
Mhm.
I think that might just be my marketing, to be honest. Cause like you said, and you said it well, like this is kind of like a feel good album. And it's really my first album that is a feel good album. If you listen to my previous albums, like they're so depressing, dude. And this was like the kind of the first time I really wanted to embrace, like, not just the culture of the West Coast, because, like the culture of the West Coast, like I just said a few minutes ago, it's a lot different than the music I've been putting out before. There's a lot of energy there. You got the whole culture of, lowriders and chucks and smoking weed and like all, having a good time. So I really wanted to lean into that. And I think the thing is like, there's so much in the world right now that makes people feel awful. So it's like, I kind of want to give something to people where they can forget about that for about 45 minutes and kind of to even take them back to a time where things were a lot simpler than they are now.
Mhm.
So I kind of think that's where my marketing is going at that point. Cause I mean, that's really what it is. I don't want to release music or put music out that doesn't connect with people on an emotional level. And it's
Yeah.
really hard to do that with marketing because I feel like once you start put marketing in it, you kind of strip a lot of that human aspect of it away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's my biggest thing. Obviously you want things to do well, but like you don't want to take the human element out of it. So it's a little bit tricky to market music because it's like, how do you make a product out of art?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't even thought of it that way. But I agree with what you say. Like I said before, it's feel good. But not only that, it's like I played it when I was like making breakfast and cleaning the kitchen. And it like, if I could describe the music and how it made me feel, it's like it felt like coming home to myself. Like, it's like coming
That's
back to
awesome.
that like me, like
That's great.
behind me.
And that's what I was going for. That's exactly it. Just to hear you say that is great because that means I did my job. Like it really was supposed to. We all grew up in that era. Like we all grew up with Dr. Dre's 2001. We grew up with Eminem and Snoop Dogg and 50 Cent. And like, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
like that music means so much to me. And I know it means a lot to everybody else. So that was the point. So I'm really glad to hear that actually.
Yeah. No, I think it's gonna be awesome. I'm super excited for you. Do you plan on like going like touring? Do you perform live at all?
I used to. The thing about touring is like I was touring a lot. And I took a year off to make that album I talked about that came out the worst time ever. And then all of a sudden COVID happened, right? So we're talking like I took time off from touring when I was 28, about 28, 29. And my intention was I'm gonna take a year off and write new music and then go back on the road. And then COVID happened. So it's like by the time from the time I took a break to the time that the pandemic was declared over, I'm in my mid 30s now. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I don't really have the energy to tour like I used to, but I would definitely like to do something. I just don't know what, because I know I'm not getting in a van and living in a van for a month and a half anymore. Like, that's out of the fucking question.
Yeah.
But, like, a couple weeks on the road, like, yeah, for sure. I would have to figure that out, though, because this is the first album I've ever done also where I don't rap on it at all, like, not on a
Mhm.
single song. So that's brand new for me, and then I would have to kind of figure out how I would change my whole stage show because I'm not gonna be front and center. A lot of the rappers on the album, I can't take on tour with me, so not that I'd be against it. I think that would actually be kind of a cool challenge. It would just have to be done in a way where, like, people are still entertained. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
totally. Put
Yeah.
on a put on a certain kind of show for sure.
Yeah. And I see, like, DJ Khaled doing it, and maybe I can do something like that. All he does is get on the microphone and go, "We're the best," and everybody does their shit. So
And everybody knows him. Like that,
exactly.
yeah, it
Exactly.
sticks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, maybe you might be onto something there. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, it's perfect marketing for himself, his image.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
So, working in the music industry, because not only do you do this album, you do a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
What is that like in your day to day?
Every day is different, but I would say on the average, I spend a lot of time listening to music, which is awesome. I
Mhm.
spend a lot of time discovering new artists. That's kind of the biggest thing I do outside of like making records myself is, you know, um, I kind of hate the word A&R, but essentially that's what I do. I scout new artists. So I spend a lot of time talking to artists. I spend a lot of time talking to their team, a lot of time talking to the record label, which is Sony is the main label I work with. They're the ones also releasing my album. I guess it's really not a whole lot different from this. There's just a different, what's the word I'm looking for? There's just a different point to it, I guess, for lack
Mhm.
of a better term. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm on the phone pretty much all day, every day with tons of different people, which is very interesting for me because I have very bad social anxiety and I picked the most social career possible. But
I
it's
relate.
uh,
I
but it's
totally
good.
relate.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of forces us to get out of our comfort zone, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of more or less what my day to day is. But it's like I said, it's different. Some days I'm just on my laptop and I'm making beats all day from
Mhm.
sunrise to sundown, or sometimes I don't do anything.
Okay, yeah. And so you're scouting new people. What are you looking for when you're looking for a new artist? And then on the flip side of that, what do people do wrong? Because I see your
That's a good one.
posts, so let's talk about it.
That's a good question. What I look for, well, unfortunately, first and foremost, like there are prerequisites to working with a major record label. So at the minimum, they have to have 50,000 monthly listeners, which I hate to say because like I know I'm like disqualifying like 95% of people right there.
Mhm.
But this is still a business, right? At the end of the day. And if you're going to make an investment on somebody, you have to be somewhat sure that you'll get at least some kind of ROI. So
Yeah.
that's number one. But number two, for me personally, outside of what the label requires, other than good music, is being coachable and understanding that you don't know everything and that you're never going to know everything because this is a very complex business. And I've been in it for 10 years professionally, 20 years doing it altogether. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
started my first record label when I was 16 years old. So, and I'm still learning shit every single day. And, you come across, unfortunately, and I'm sure you can relate to this just being an artist in general. You come across a lot of people that think either they're better than they are or they know more than they do. And, that kind of sometimes kind of makes people's heads go like this. And I try to avoid those type of people because 10 out of 10 times that shit never goes well. And, so that's the biggest thing to me is being coachable, understanding you don't know everything. And then also being able to put in the work and I don't just mean like making the music because everybody will do that. A few artists will do the work that sucks that's necessary. Let me put it like this, like you have artist A and artist B, they're both in not a recording studio, but like a radio station, right? And they're
Mhm.
doing drops. You know what I mean by drops?
No,
When they're
that's
when
right.
so when they go when you're listening to the radio and you hear like, yo, this is so and so artist, and you're
Ah,
listening to 93.7 FM, that's a drop, right?
okay.
So a
Mhm.
lot of times an artist will sit there in one radio station and do drops for like 300 fucking radio stations in one sitting because they can't afford to fly you out to all these stations, you know? So my point is the artist that sits there when they drop that fat stack and they're like, hey, we have to do all these radio drops. The artist that's like, man, fuck that. I'm too good for this. Like, I need to be in the studio versus the artist that's like, give me something to drink, give me something to roll up, and let's knock this down. I'm voting on that artist to win every single time, 10 out of 10 times. So that's the artist that I look for. I don't want to deal with artist A that thinks they're too good for that shit and that they should be in the studio. And that's the only job that they have because that's just not
Mhm.
the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you gotta put in that work behind the scenes. I never even thought about that, but yes, I know exactly what you're talking about when they do it on the radio stations. And yeah, I'm sure arrogance plays a pretty big role in
For
the
sure.
industry.
Yes, for sure. Especially when you get some artists too, like when they are really talented and they are as good as they think they are and they're successful, watch out. 'Cause, yeah, sometimes that can be a recipe for disaster, but sometimes those artists are also very humble. So, I guess it just depends on who you're dealing with.
Yeah. Have you ever seen an artist, let's say, for example, that starts off real in their ego and arrogant, get knocked down and fumbled along the way?
Yes. Oh God, yes. You know what, Anna? I'll even put myself in the hot seat. Me, that's happened to me. When you're in your 20s and you're used to not having shit for your whole life, and then all of a sudden you have all this success, you have all this money, and then you have all these people telling you how fucking great you are. You kind of start to believe it, one way or another, life is going to humble you. And I had that happen. My head got a little bit too big. I rubbed some people that I shouldn't have rubbed the wrong way. And I burned some bridges and I had some not so great press posted about me. And I learned from that, and that's why I always tell like young artists, like, hey, be humble because just as quickly as you got this, it can be gone like that, and I'm fortunate to where like I was able to recover from it. I'm a pretty resilient guy. I also had the wherewithal to like be like, okay, well, I'm the villain to everybody. Let them think what they want and let your work do the talking. You know what I mean? Some
Mhm.
people still think I'm the villain. That's okay. Because at the end of the day, I guess it's really about, what inside yourself and your integrity. And I think that's what I'm ultimately getting at. Like, if you don't have inner peace in this industry will fucking eat you alive. It's kind of the point I'm trying to get at,
Yeah, for sure. We're all a villain in somebody's story. And
Oh, of
sometimes
course.
people just get a perspective of us and they won't let it go. And that's fine. It's like you said, it's having your own integrity and knowing who
Right.
you are.
Right. Yeah, if you can sleep at night, then who gives a fuck what anybody thinks, right?
For sure.
And I'm the type of dude like, you love me or you hate me. And there's not a lot of in between because I'm honest and I say it like it is and I say it
Mhm.
as I see it, And some people appreciate that about me. Some people that drives them fucking insane.
Yeah. I love that about you. And I think most of the time, people that don't like that, it's because they're not being real with themselves. So when somebody else is being
Sure.
real in front of them, they're like, oh, that does not make me feel good.
Yeah. Well, especially when like, I just called myself out. So like if I call somebody else out, like I will call myself out. That also goes double. If I put myself on the hot seat, I'm fucking for sure putting you on it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes we need it. I mean, I think, even myself, we all have our moments where we need to be humble, where life kicks us in the ass and we just have to get back up and keep going.
Yeah. And, for myself, I kind of appreciate people that are honest with me. Sometimes you really do need like an outside perspective of somebody being like, hey, I care about you, but you're kind of fucking up right now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because sometimes you're just not aware of it. Sometimes you're just
Mhm.
so wrapped up in what's going on that you could be so set in your heart of hearts that you're absolutely in the right. but you could be overlooking something and then somebody else points that out to you and that changes your whole perspective. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
self-awareness is important, you know?
for sure. Self-awareness, and then we all have blind spots, like you said.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just don't see it. And I mean, I think with anything I do, I've learned to take feedback. I don't know that I've always been that way, especially in this part of my life. People be like, "Are you open to feedback?" I'm like, "Yes, please." Like, actually tell me everything that's wrong with it so that I can fix it. Like, I want to know how you're seeing it because I
Yeah.
can't see it any other way than how I'm seeing it until somebody else shows me.
For sure. I mean, especially when emotions get involved. God,
Mhm.
emotions are a bitch. Emotions will totally like cloud your judgment and make it harder to analyze situations. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I know for myself, like if I'm really fired up about something, like I'm calling one of my friends, I'm breaking it down to one of my friends, and then I'm immediately asking, am I the asshole? You know what I mean?
Yes,
It's just, I don't want to be the asshole. And if I am, like, I need checked, you know?
yes. It's funny. I literally did that yesterday. I had a situation where I was really mad and I called my friend and I like laid it all out and I was like, am I being crazy? Like, just tell me, am I being an asshole right now?
Sometimes you need to do that, you know?
Yes. Because especially as artists, we're passionate people. And when you're a passionate person, that comes with big emotions. So yeah.
Yeah. And for me, like, back to self-awareness is I also understand, like, I have a lot of mental health issues. I have anxiety disorder. I have PTSD, depression. Like, I got a whole cocktail of mentally fucked up. You know what I mean? And so, it's been important for me to manage that and be in control of that. And I think that's a big part of it as well is like, I also understand that because I have health issues, sometimes I can blow shit out of proportion in my mind. I'm not going to lie. Like I do that a lot, and I, I kind of gotten to the point where I've practiced myself enough to where I'll self-analyze and like check myself before I even say
Mhm.
anything. Cause if I'm not 100% sure that I'm not being irrational, I'm not saying shit, you know?
I do that same that's like my new thing where like I'll just get really quiet and so, like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm just
I'm
having a
just,
moment."
I'm just figuring this shit out.
Yeah.
I'm arguing with myself right now. Don't
Yeah.
mind me. Yeah.
I'm like, "I just need to shut the fuck up for a minute so that I can figure out, like, how I can express myself because I know where I'm at right now, it's not gonna go well, and I'm gonna just do something that I'm gonna later feel bad about."
That's me all day. I used to be like a real big firecracker and just like not care what I say and who I say it to. And, I think part of growing up is realizing you can't be like that, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you burn some bridges that you can't rebuild, unfortunately, and we learn, as we go, what's
Yeah.
worth and what's not.
Yeah. Seriously.
So for an artist that is trying to build their career, make their music, get into it, what would you tell them? Like, I don't necessarily want to say advice, maybe advice, but what are your words of wisdom for somebody trying to get into the industry?
Don't do it unless you really, really love it. Don't do it unless you're 1000% positive that there is no alternative for you. And the reason I say that is because this is the worst industry you could possibly get into. Not only is it the most gaslighting industry that there is, but I mean, I think everybody is becoming more and more and more aware by like how fucking terribly we're paid. Spotify pays like a fraction of a penny per stream. So the reason I'm saying all that is because for most people, when you tell them that, they're like, there's no fucking way I would ever get involved in that. Unless that is completely out of the question that you're like, no, there's nothing else. Find something else. If you are that person that is like, there is nothing else for me, you have to be ready to eat shit, a big plate of it for a very, very long time before you get a shred of success. And then when you do get success, you have to eat a whole lot more shit, So that's kind of why I say that, this is not to sound cliche, but this industry is not for the weak. You have to
Mhm.
have literally bank vault thick skin to survive in this industry. And I didn't have that at first. I will completely admit that. I was very sensitive. I cared a great deal about what people thought about me. And I kind of learned maybe through trauma to like stop caring what people thought about me.
Mhm.
Um, but you have to like, it's so hard to explain. You have to really have like a mental warfare kind of mentality. Like you really have to be willing to put the war paint on your face and go into the trenches because even when you're successful, that's what it is because then you're just fighting to keep your spot. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there's everybody coming at you to take it, by the way.
Mhm. Yeah. Very cutthroat. And I hear
Yeah.
you gotta have your heart in it or it's not gonna work. Do you think
No,
people, I mean, obviously people get into it for the wrong reasons, but those people probably don't make it that far.
they don't. And I think that's becoming less common though, because like I said,
Mhm.
people are becoming increasingly aware of like how bad this industry is right now. You hear a lot of news about Spotify and artist payouts. So I think a lot more people are becoming aware, like, oh, music is not a quick ticket to getting rich. A lot of people, I feel like, I don't know if you remember this, but like, it seemed like in like 2017, 2018, like literally everybody wanted to be a rapper.
Yes.
And then I think everybody kind of figured out like, oh, being a rapper actually fucking sucks. Never mind. That's kind of what I'm getting at is like, I think people are realizing that like if you get into this for the wrong reasons, like you're a fool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely don't want to waste a bunch of your life doing something that is not going to work or that you don't want to stick it out with. I think that's kind of true across the board. If your heart's not in something, you're going to get chewed up and spit out. And
Yeah, it's just like,
it's
and it's
worth
also
your
like
time.
I don't want to sell dreams to anybody. Like I said, this is a fucking terrible industry. It's awful. You
Yeah.
know, if there if I didn't have that passion for this to where I was like, there's nothing else for me, there's no fucking way I would be in this industry. I
Mhm.
often feel like I'm way too smart for this industry, because of the fact that like it's 10 years behind everything. I mean, the contracts are like, I mean, like some of these contracts for like record deals, like they were written in the 70s, like they still have clauses about like damages and losses regarding to CDs and vinyls. And shit, we've been
Interesting.
out of the CD age for like 2 decades. You know what I mean? Or more,
Yeah.
longer than that. MP3s became a thing in like the late 90s. So yeah, it's just like there's so many, like if your goal is to make a lot of money, do something else. You know what I'm saying? Like for the love of God, do something else.
Yeah. Okay. I hear you. So with your album coming out, there's lots of streaming platforms. Is it essentially everywhere? Where's the best place to find
Every
it?
everywhere. I was going to honestly leave it off at Spotify because of everything I just said, but
Mhm.
I want this to be easily accessible to everybody. I would prefer the fans go buy it from me directly, but like if you're
Mhm.
just gonna go stream it, that's cool too. I just want people to hear it. I want people to enjoy it. I really don't even care about how much it sells. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? As long as it like keeps doing what it did with you, or like you said, it made you feel at home.
Yeah.
That's really all I care about.
I love that. I feel like it's gonna be more successful just for that reason. When you're doing something genuinely because your heart is in it and not like, I'm doing this because I need it to be successful. You're like, I'm doing this because this feels good and I think it's gonna feel good to other people.
Yeah. I did it because it was something I literally felt like I had to do. I feel like that was the one box in my career I didn't check, and it was the one album I always wanted to make. From the beginning of when I started this, I just didn't have the skill set to do it yet. It's a particularly hard genre. A lot of people don't realize how hard West Coast rap fucking is, man. It's like, one, it's hard because I mean, look at who's been doing it for the last few decades and the competition that's there.
Mhm.
So one, you have to create something that is not only on par with that, but that hasn't already been done. And two, the instrumentation of it is those walking bass lines and like the attention to detail. I spent more time mixing this album than I did writing it. You know what I mean? And like obsessively mixing it. to the point where I wanted to chuck my laptop out of the window like 5 times, you know? Yeah. So it was a hard album to do, and it was just something I felt in my soul that I needed to do. And I did it. And now I feel like I can move on to other things and not look back and be like, fuck, man, I really wish I did that. You know?
Yeah. I love that so much. I'm glad you saw it through. I'm super excited for other people to listen to it and to
Thank
hear
you.
it. What do you think is the most popular streaming site right now?
Spotify, unfortunately.
I know like everybody uses it. It's funny because I'm a Pandora girly and I just can't get away from it. I'm like, I've just always used it. I prefer it. So to try to get Spotify, I feel like my Pandora knows me. That sounds
Yeah, for
really
sure it
bad.
does. It for sure does. I actually miss Pandora. I started with Pandora before Spotify. And no, I love that about it. I like everything I listened to all the time. It was my Pandora mix, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? I kind of wish it was more like that. But, even with Pandora, like the digital age of music is so freaking hard to navigate because I feel like while Spotify is the big thing right now, that could change tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough, like TikTok up until about, I don't know, maybe last summer, it was like TikTok was the only thing that mattered. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Now it's like, I don't even know what the fuck it is now. I don't think anybody does. I think we're in like this weird, like purgatory right now,
Yeah. It's in a weird limbo where you have like the threads and the reels on Instagram and the reels on TikToks. I don't know.
Yeah. 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 I know. It's getting a lot more convoluted, I feel like.
For sure. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Super dope podcast. Super, super, super fun conversation with Emma. Appreciate you guys watching. Go follow me on the gram. You feel me? DLynch for real. My new album, Sticky Notes, dropping April 20th. Make sure you guys go cop that. Yada, man.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to my podcast. Remember, loves, your best is always enough. Thank you for sharing this space with me today. Catch you on the flip side.